In just a moment. There we go. Or we can just jump right in. Hi, everybody. Continue. There we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 42nd Independent Music Business Series session. We are excited to have you all here tonight. Possibly one of the last nights in a digital form only, to be determined. We have a great topic and a great set of speakers. And I'm going to pass it over to Jamie, the Executive Director of Ottawa Music Industry Coalition, to introduce the speakers and introduce herself as the moderator for tonight. Over to you, Jamie.
All right. Awesome, Byron. I think we have a really awesome session. You're monitoring all the people that are still continuing to come in. It's going to be a busy group tonight. We are so excited to bring you these panelists. We'll just mute if you're not chatting because you'll get feedback if we have too many microphones on. So just mute some people. Okay, there we go. All right, so let me just introduce you to our panelists. We have Mary Jelley. She's the Regional Manager of Warner Music Canada. She works with local, national, and international recording artists signed to the label, playing a critical role in the development and success of many Canadian artists. Mary's passion is to help develop careers. She is an active member of the Canadian Academy of Recording Arts and Science, CARAS, and the Canadian Country Music Association. She's involved with many community initiatives, including serving on Oh My is being recorded. Oh, there we go. I should make it so it mutes automatically. So Mary sits on our board of directors. We are so happy to have her on that. And she's also the chair of our programming committee. Let me just take 1 second. Byron, are you able to control people muted upon entry?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Because I can't figure it out at the moment. Thank you. And our next panelist is Ola Mazzuca. So she's joining us all the way from Toronto. So music is Ola's life vocation, both born and raised in Toronto. Ola launched her career over the 10 years as a multimedia journalist deep within the mosh pits of the city's metal community. Since then, her journey into music has expanded tenfold. Her work and personal experience span a wide spectrum of ranging from features editor of a magazine to project coordinator for the development of programs supporting accessibility and inclusion within art galleries and museums, to hosting and producing several podcast series supporting community initiatives. Blending her passion for arts and community, she's the senior publicist at a Toronto-based public relations and artist management company, Indoor Recess, working with artists from across Canada and beyond, fostering interest in their music and personal stories. So a company definitely for everybody to check out, Indoor Recess. As I'm talking, feel free to pop in, or as people are talking, feel free to pop in any links into the chat that people might find helpful. And next up, we have Asuquomo, one of our members at OMIC and formerly a board member. So Asuquomo, blending nonverbal spells and using West African spirituals as hooks, Nigerian-born, Canadian-based musician Asuquomo maintains an unmistakable sound and unique dexterity for storytelling through a Pan-African narrative as an Afrofusion artist. In 2019, Asuquomo released an extended play project, Diabo, which was financially supported by the Ontario Arts Council. Pitchfork magazine had described the EP as a project which explores themes of family, home, and the immigrant experience in his adopted city. In the 20 great records you may have missed in the summer of 2020. So, what a stellar, amazing lineup that we have today to answer some of your questions on marketing, which is constantly a topic we're getting requests on at OMIC. So what we're going to do today, the format is, well, first let me also thank Byron Wave. He is one of our partners for IMB. This is the 42nd IMB that he has co-hosted. And so it's been running for the last 5 years. And so this is basically, the topics are crowdsourced based on the demand, and Byron helps curate amazing panelists, and we help it wherever we can at OMIC. And so we're so glad to have everyone find these sessions useful. So the way that today can run is we have some questions that are prepared based on some themes that have come out through requests that we've had. The panelists will each be given an opportunity. If they want to speak to that question, they can go ahead, share their experience and expertise. And then if you have questions related to that question as follow-up, feel free to put it in the chat and I'll make sure to mention that to the panelists. And then otherwise we'll save some time at the end of the session to do a more general forum Q&A. Sound good? All right. Okay. So, first question. What is the difference between public relations, publicity, marketing, and sales? So, who would like to take that question on? Kick us off. Mary.
Yeah, I'll do that one. Well, PR and publicity are basically the same. I mean, PR, the definition is strategic communication between a company or individual to the public, whereas publicity is making the public aware of a product or service or organization. I think basically they are kind of the same thing. You know, they're both under the same umbrella. Marketing is different. That is definitely a plan. That is your plan to promote or sell your product, service, your artistry. And then I think you asked sales. So sales would be obviously the physical goods, streams, merchandise, and digital downloads. So completely different. But obviously when you have a marketing plan, that encompasses the sales side of things. That makes sense?
That is amazing. It's good to have those definitions. Oftentimes then we can understand how we're understanding like things that you're talking about or things that different people are mentioning. So that is really good to start us off with some definitions.
Okay.
Does anyone want to add to that or do you want me to move on? We're good?
I guess, yeah, I'll just add that Mary, yeah, that was perfect. And going into the music side of things too, I think all of those those go hand in hand and they merge together at various points in the process. So that's why they each have a role in your work as an artist. And as well, we'll note that publicists have that role as the facilitator between artists and audience as well, or artists and media outlet. So we are the facilitators to set up interviews, provide necessary assets to help further that information sharing. So that's, yeah, there's something to add, but yeah, that was great, Mary.
Wonderful, wonderful. So many artists, we often focus on indie artists in Ottawa, and one of our panelists, I think, is a prime example of one. But when is it time for an artist to start thinking about hiring a professional to help them out with these components that you just talked about? And when is the right time? And then what is also the process of going about it?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with, oh.
Although you can go ahead, I'll jump in after you.
No, if you want to go ahead, you go.
Okay, I put down something on my notes here. I was just gonna blurt it out. I said when the work gets too much, is like a good one to just not forget. When the work gets too much is kind of a good measure stick. That means when you need someone to help to maybe reply emails or update pages or put up statuses and stuff. Just when you need an extra hand, then you can think about that. But then next to that, I said definitely before you sign anything, right? So even if you don't have anyone hired as a professional on your end, and then you run into contracts or anything like that, you definitely need a professional hired to kind of make sure you're having the best foot forward. But I was going to start there.
Yeah. Mary?
I'd like to add in that obviously there's so much that you can do yourself. There's so much you can do yourself. And I totally agree. If you get to the position where you can't keep up, then it is time to maybe look at hiring somebody. I think surrounding yourself with people that obviously you trust is incredibly important, and somebody that maybe has the same vision as you. And I think in today's market, I think it's really important on the video side because it's all about content. Content is so important. So maybe a videographer, somebody to capture those moments, because if you look at all the different platforms these days, it's all about content. And we live in a social media society, and if you look at TikTok, obviously, people are posting stuff daily or weekly or hourly, and you never know when something's going to go viral. So having all kinds of content is really, really important, whether it's live footage, whether it's, you out skateboarding, but you have to be your authentic self doing the video side of things. But I think that's really important too. But I totally agree. If you get to the point where you can't keep up with either media or interviews or emails or pages, then yes, it is time to get some help.
Mm-hmm. And in the work that I've done, I've gone to work with you, Mo, and I think you've gone through the process of hiring. I see your career developing. How did you go about finding like partners? I guess, were they people you already collaborated with before and you knew that they offered the service to help you out? Or Ola, when do people reach out to you? And I know Mary, a lot of times we get requests of like, can we connect with Mary right away? And are there steps before connecting with a label that an artist can look into?
Ola, did you want to start on that one?
Yeah, I was going to add a couple of things to the last point as well about when is the right time to reach out and look for someone to bring on your team. And going back to the creative aspect as well, I thought that was really important. Having a strong creative team to help you produce your content is super, super important right now, especially in the digital landscape that we're working in, even more so than ever before. As well, on the publicity side, when is the right time to bring someone on? I think it's when you need assistance and support, you can't do it all on your own anymore. And B, if you're looking for specific best practices and strategies that you may not have considered prior, as well as ways to go about your press campaign with a strategy or impactful way. And that goes in tandem with having an advisor, a mentor, or a manager to help you make those decisions along the way in building that team and working on your rollout and your project process. In terms of the process of hiring someone on the PR side, from my experience, is there's a variety of ways, and this can go about in which how artists find the people they work with. It could be a referral, it could be a connection of sorts, or it could be cold call research. It could be looking online to find local or national, international perhaps, because a lot of artists these days will work with publicity teams that cover Canada, teams that cover Europe and UK, teams that cover the US, depending on what their focus is and their audience is. In our case, we're a national PR company, so we cover Canadian media. But going back to the search, it could be looking at a company that aligns with who you are as an artist, looking at their artist roster. Are there artists on there that you identify with, connect with, are inspired by perhaps, and feel that the services that they offer and the experience that they have can align with your work and your sound? So that's one thing. And, I would always suggest in the process too, knowing what you're looking for, knowing what services that you need, and knowing that the company can meet those as well, that you can collaboratively work together in that process. And as well, like, I think whenever you reach out, always have your information available. Like we can get into this in a bit, but, looking at a compelling piece to share with that potential team member as to why they could possibly align with your company and work with you. I always think whenever doing a cold call contact, it's always really refreshing to get a really solid detailed email with an EPK and a lot of key information about who you are as an artist and your sound, and a lot of assets to support that initial contact.
Wonderful, wonderful. Did anyone want to add on that, Mo, Mary?
I wanted to say, so if you're trying to hire a professional on the artist end, being ready means your website has to, like some certain things have to be in place, right? You have to have done some sort of research on like the title of what you're trying to hire for the role. If you're trying to hire a manager, at least Google what a music manager does, or Google what a publicist is, or just make sure your definitions are right. So if you eventually find someone, that they're doing what they should be, the right roles, but also you want to kind of you want to know what the role entails and how much of that help you need. For example, if you want to do a cover for a song, you may want to start at somewhere like Fiverr for professional help, as opposed to just going bigger than that. But then you're still going somewhere where like you're in a pool of options with different styles and artistic like preferences. So you're still getting the best bang for your buck. But then just having some sort of way to filter, and not being afraid to say no, if even if you get reached out by a label, say, hey, can we work together, and you check out their roster and they check out your stuff and it doesn't work, some months can go by and you can check them out again. But it's something to just have in the back of your mind that hiring a professional in the music industry is very it has to fit what you're trying to do, particularly you're literally your branding, your next release has to go with what you're going for and who you're hiring. Yeah, I was going to say that.
That's cool. That's interesting. So having it fit what you're standing for, your type of music, maybe the area and group that you're targeting, but also within budgets, right? And you gave some examples from Fiverr, which is how do you explain? It's kind of like is it an app where you can get different freelancing services there, right? And you could seek out different types. Yeah, so you can everything from graphic designer to other support services. So you can do that. That's very affordable, very accessible, at your fingertips to a more specific industry expertise, like the panelists that we have here tonight. So that's interesting. So having it fit within what you're looking for and where you're aligned, but also your alignment in the budget. So yeah, so one of the questions that we constantly get is, how can artists start? Is that a goal artists should be working towards, is budgeting for that? Like, okay, how much do I need to budget to get like that type of service? Or how much income do I need to bring in on my own through my music to be able to afford these type of services? Is that something that's something artists have been asking? Is there any kind of feedback any of you can provide us with that on what kind of numbers should an artist have in mind when they're looking at professional music PR services?
Yeah, it varies. It really varies depending on the type of the campaign and the duration of the campaign. So it really depends on what it is. Usually, like an approximate range, a good firm will cost between $1,000 to $1,500 a month. But again, it really depends on what this is approximate. It depends on what the project entails and what is involved. So it really varies based on project to project and what you're releasing and what you're working on. But typically the cost generally becomes less the greater the duration of the campaign or of the duration of the contract. The work is very labor intensive. So as well, like firms can only accommodate so many projects at once as well. So there's that to consider. And I feel like relationships they grow from there depending on the duration of the projects and how those flow. But again, all very approximate, but that would be like
a range, something to think about. Okay, it's good to have those kind of ballpark numbers so people can get a sense of that. And then, like again, Mo mentioned that there is a range that we can start with. So one of the ways that people have been reaching audiences in different ways in a very accessible way in terms of financial has been digital marketing. So that's been a very big thing, especially over the last year. Artists had to really just turn to their digital platforms to connect. Is there any things that artists should have known already or should know now to grasp so that they can really utilize digital platforms more effectively? Any tips on that?
I want to start off by saying right now with everything going on, digital marketing is absolutely necessary for the artist. However, I would also say it can wait based on the level of where the artist is, the profile of where the artist is, the projection of what your next 12 months should be, or the next year, or the next rollout. It can wait with strategy lined up, right? Plus the stage of where the artist is. I'm saying it can wait because you don't want to put funding into, put budgets into digital marketing, and then you get that, maybe you get that viral moment, for example, online, because it's all like eyes and clicks and stuff, right? So you're being put out there in the face of the world. but then you don't want to get that result from the firm you're marketing. But then when you get all that attention, your website's not plugged in. And then if your website's plugged in, all your socials are not plugged in on your website. And then if they are, your EPK is not plugged in. So everything leading up to that big the digital marketing moment has to be cleaned up. However, if you're on a profile or a level at the artist where you're still coming up slowly and your digital marketing budget is, let's say something small, let's say 500, that means you're kind of, that's kind of like the minimum you should be doing anyways. But then based on what you're, how well you've had your ducks in a row, if you do your digital marketing right and have everything properly like ready to go, it's gonna translate, right? However, if you spend a big buck on the digital marketing and it translates well, the moment that campaign is over, like the eyes and the clicks are gone because you didn't have like your assets, like your EPK and your website to hold that attention, to keep followers and to keep like subscribers and newsletters and all that stuff. So digital marketing is important, but it has to be the right time and the right releases.
And content, right?
Yeah.
And so Mary, Ola, you two both work with artists so directly. In terms of your services for digital, I have a question on, okay, so providing services to people who get music grants to pay for these services. If clients are often, oh wait, sorry. How do, who music pay for the services with the client? So, okay, how do you work with artists when they're going about it, accessing your services through various grants? Like how do you go about offering services, or what kind of things do you offer them in terms of that kind of parameter?
I'm not sure I understand fully. Is this for, sorry, say
I can jump in.
Yeah.
I sent Chamber the question.
I'm just trying to read, it's very long.
So I just wanted to see if you could maybe speak to the fact or speak to like the kinds of clients that PR agencies have. And I kind of put them in categories possibly of people who got money from a grant to pay for marketing services, or like an indie label who's paying a PR firm, or like an indie artist who didn't get money from like a grant or doesn't have someone else paying for it. Like, I guess what I'm saying is like, are you finding that a lot of people that PR firms support or provide services to are paying for that through like factor grants? Or is it like, is that a large portion of clientele at PR firms like yours? Or is that like not, does that not play much of a role?
I've actually, to be honest, I've never really thought of it that way, Byron. Like, of that playing a huge role. It's, I think it goes back to the alignment aspect between agency and artist. We see a diverse like array of backgrounds coming in for, working on where someone is coming from in terms of the support level they have and that backing, whether it's through a label, fully independent, or they're supported by a grant. So I actually can't really speak to that level for all really, but I don't think it's more of one over the other. Yeah, I think it's a varied array. Yeah.
Okay. And so we talked about digital marketing. Another way that artists are getting their music and their brand out there is through radio. Oftentimes locally, it's community radio has been a very accessible way to broadcast our local artists. Mary, you work with a ton of radio hosts. You've introduced me to a ton and got them on board on OMIC initiatives. How can, and you've connected me with the larger radio stations. And I know a lot of our artists have a challenge accessing those kind of routes, whereas the community college radio is more accessible. What are some key things that an artist should think about in terms of reaching out to radio? How can they get more effective at getting getting in onto their playlist and getting heard? What might be some tips that you have in your work that you've done with radio hosts and your artists?
Well, you're right. Some of the commercial radio stations don't play a lot of indie artists or local artists, but some do. Like, I don't know how many people realize that Hot 89.9 has a program specifically for local. And if you go to their website and you look under music, they have an area called Local Love, where you can submit stuff to get played on the air. And most people probably wouldn't know that. Live 88.5 does the same thing. Obviously, CBC plays a fair amount of local. So if you don't know the producers of the shows on CBC regionally, you should, or the hosts, you should, because they want to promote local talent, and they're very open to that. So yes, campus radio is fantastic, and you should be. Oh, if you haven't, approached all the different programs on campus, that's another thing that's incredibly important. But yeah, locally there are a few that will play local talent, and actually Country 92.3, they'll play local talent as well. So depending on format, there is a little bit of wiggle room at some of the stations, at least in this market.
Okay. We have a comment from Michael. He's saying community radio is killing it, and I second that. We have been very connected with a few, such as Joel, who has a show on CKCU, and Indie Madness. They've been asking us to like send them releases, and so we're constantly getting people sending their news releases to us. So just make sure that you're building up your media contacts, as Mary was saying. Find out all these different stations, from community radio to the larger radio stations, to see where their local content could fit in. That is wonderful. You mentioned
also, one thing I should have added is CTV. I mean, they do local programming for their morning show. So CTV Morning Live, they have artists on almost every single day, and they have a lot of local talent on there. I mean, they do bigger artists, but they do a lot of local as well. So that's another avenue.
Is there a way to hook, like, well, would there be a way, because I know they probably get a lot of requests, like, of here's my local new album. Is there a way that artists can kind of add a hook in so that it gets more attention? Is there any trick to that?
I don't know that there's a trick. Obviously, having a great email, and a link, with some footage and all your assets all in one place, so they don't have to go searching. They don't have the resources to do that. So if you put together a great package for them and follow up with them, I think persistence is definitely probably part of the equation, and getting to know them, reaching out and getting to know them, and invite them out to a show if you're doing a show.
Okay, that is great. And so we just talked about already creating content, getting your EPKs ready. If you don't have that updated or don't have one, that's something to look into right away. So you have that ready. Oftentimes, if I'm working with someone and like the radio host asks, hey, do the interview with another artist, I'll reach out, and I'm hoping that that artist has all that stuff ready. So that's really good to have your content ready. And now let's get to another form of media. Let me just check on the chat. I see it's kind of lighting up. So let me just go through here for a bit. CTV Morning, a lot of our local stations have been great in featuring local content. They've been very kind to us on Encore and our awards, for example. If anyone here is a host of any radio stations, feel free to pop in your info, your contact info into the chat, please, so that everyone can build up their media list with your info. That is wonderful, Michael. Thank you for putting that in. Thank you, Glenn. Perfect. So pop in any resources into the chat. I will save the chat, and I encourage anyone else. I think you can save it too on your end. Otherwise, I'll save it. And if you have questions on the resources, let me know and I'll forward that over to you. So now we're going to get into another form of media. So print is still there, right? Is there any, it's still there, right? Is it worth an investment on behalf of the artist to look into print media as a way to engage and promote and market themselves? And if so, why is it still important, and how might they use those platforms in an effective way? So anybody?
Yeah, big question. It's coming from someone that has been a journalist for a while and was an editor at a print publication that still loves that physical, tangible, piece of information. It's really special. As a lot of people know, these days the print landscape is changing, as it long has been. As it long has been, and even since before the pandemic. So really it's about timeline parameters right now, because a lot of print outlets, they're not dead, they're certainly not dying. We're seeing a lot of other independent communities do a lot of fantastic DIY pieces. Like, I'm a big fan of zines. I'm a big fan of just independent developing print publications as well. And there's a lot out there right now too that are covering a lot of different angles in terms of topics and themes. In terms of the advantage and the process of having a print piece, I think it's where a lot of major profile pieces can live. It's where an evergreen story can live. It's where that bold piece that is really representative of who you are can live. And it's an opportunity to have that physical feature that is aligned with who you are as an artist, and with your sound, your goals, your story as a whole. And often would recommend doing it at a very pivotal moment, where whether it's like right at the height of launching an album, going through a transitional moment in your career and in your music, things like that, milestone pieces, or maybe just a special feature that might tie into a key theme or topic that is connected to who you are as an artist, as a special feature. So yeah, in terms of the challenges around that, it's more so just about navigating the timelines, and knowing when publications are publishing and how often they do in a year, and the timeline that you would need to reach out to them, which is our job, but the timeline you need to prepare.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let me see. Okay, and another form right now of media that is getting out there that people are utilizing more, and you can have more kind of control over them, is podcasts. So many music podcasts are popping up every week. Lots of favorites, local ones too. How has podcast played a role for artists in promoting artists? Do any of you have some experience on them? Is it something that's coming up more, or is it not?
Yeah, I'd like to start, if that's cool. I'm a big fan of podcasts. I produced many and hosted my own. I really love podcasts because I feel like they can work at any point of an artist's journey. Right now, they're a great place to have a short chat, to have a long form chat, to talk about a single, to talk about an album, to talk about, again, maybe a long timeline of how the length of your career. And it's a good way to have a long form, in-depth discussion that can even be about something else that is tied to who you are. It could be about a lifestyle angle or a fun theme, and you can still bring it back to the music. You can still bring it back to your work and promote yourself that way too. So it offers that chance for you to target an audience with a specific interest, but also bring it back to the music. So you're not only targeting a diverse audience, but you're getting a really good opportunity and a space to speak about yourself and share those insights and share more about yourself. And again, it's not so limited in the fact that you can be on a podcast at one point in your career. It could be really at any time, because there are also so many right now. And bringing it back to campus radio, which I saw some great comments in the chat about, campus is awesome. Yeah, it's so underrated. A lot of programmers have their ears to the ground. They really know what's going on, and they have a great sense for emerging independent or local artists. And there are also some campus stations too, or, could be just general CBC platforms that also have a podcast format. So many spaces where you can be heard as well in a digital platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ola. Mo, Mary, do you have any last kind of things you want to say about that type of media? If you want to, no? And you mentioned CBC, but I listened to Q, and I just heard one of our local musicians in Ottawa, Amanda Rayom, just on Q a few days ago, which was an amazing interview. And that's kind of been my go-to one for like catching up on artists and national artists and things like that. And I get very excited when I hear locals on there. So I think that's somewhere a lot of you all will end up, I think. In terms of campaigns, I see, so there's been various discussions over the last little while in different groups I've been in about singles versus albums and the campaigns around them. Do you have any thoughts on kind of some key tips on that, on what is the trend currently? What is the most effective trend maybe for capturing the type of audience right now in terms of promoting a single or album release? Anyone wants to speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, so with the comparison between a single and an album, I feel with an album, it's more of like a long-term rollout. There might be a bit more life on it as well. It gives you time to work through and deliver the story and the sound alongside more of an in-depth storytelling process that kind of, moves along the way and develops a bit more. In the age of touring, you might launch a single to introduce a project, and then the next single might announce an album or details around that, and then you might go into a tour announcement. So there's like a bit of a strategy involved in how that story unfolds, so it gives you a bit of space shared at different stages of that. Whereas with singles or singles and videos, when they're individually released, it can offer as a great opportunity to act as an introductory discovery piece for audiences too, whether you are a new or emerging artist, for them to get to know you, or if it's a new phase in your career or body of work, doing that too is also a good strategy. It's just not as long form, obviously, as an album. Another point too, if you were to do a one-off single and video, I think it's really strong to have the visual components. We discussed that earlier, having visual components, whether it's a lyric video, a fun illustrated visualizer, or a full-length video that's produced. These are great pieces to expand on the story, especially if it aligns with a timely topic or theme, or maybe in a social or political context as well.
Mo, I want to ask you a question. You've been very creative with what you've been releasing. You've just been nominated for Video of the Year under the Capital Music Awards of such a dynamic video. I see you have bobbleheads, you have interesting merchandise that you're promoting, you have different releases and clips that you show on your social media. For you, are there some key things that you use as your strategy when you're releasing new music, when you're releasing new video? Are there some things that you think about, you and your team, to help you kind of gain traction, or what is your goal around that? And I definitely want to get myself a bobblehead of yours.
So, yeah, no, I do a lot of testing, right? I do a lot of testing. I feel like I kind of release the music like 10 times online in different ways before it eventually goes on Spotify, right? I do put it on my story. I put it at the middle or last slide of a carousel post on my feed, or I just put it. I put it as the thing you hear while you're looking at some striking image on any of my socials, and I just mix and match and repurpose a lot of things. I find it keeps my followership engaged in what I'm leading up to, for the most part. So just those little things always work. I'm even I have a TikTok now. I don't have a profile photo, but I'm getting there, so I'm trying to see how I can move that to TikTok. So it definitely works. For campaigns for singles versus album, right now I'm working on a single that is a double single. So it's 2 songs, but it'll probably release as one single with 2 tracks in it. And then it should have a video. Working on the video on one side, but then the song is already publicly, you can hear it play for like at least 1 minute on my Instagram. So that's something that like when the song comes out, it comes out, but I'm already kind of seeing what the reaction is, and that has already guided how I'm like finalizing the work.
Very interesting, like a teaser. And Mary, you work with people at the label. So from a label perspective, how do you go about marketing your artists in terms of their singles and their albums?
So for the most part, every contract is different, but most of the time it is ultimately to release an album. You might have a first and second single, which leads into a full project. And we always have, an 18-month to 2-year sort of plan to go along with it. And like Ola said, the touring and everything else that goes on, when you're releasing new music. So I agree that for us, at least, for the most part, artists are signed to, it might be a single deal, or maybe it's a 3 single deal, but a lot of the time, or most of the time, it is for a full album project where we're going to spend 18 months, 2 years, and it might have, an option for a second one or a third one. Every contract is different, but for us, when we sign an artist directly, I mean, we do offer other services, but when an artist is signed directly, it is for a full project. For the
Okay.
most part.
Okay. And with each of these type of campaigns, what is the value of the story? Like, how does that play a role in the marketing of these things? If anyone wants to speak to that.
Yeah, I think that's super important. The value of the story is incredibly important.
Mhm.
I think now, I hate saying now more than ever. It's always has been, always has been. It always has been that the truth of who the artist is at their core, their mission through who they are as a person through their music. I think that's really important. That's one thing that always strikes me. As a journalist and a publicist is the story. That's really important to tie into the fact that your music's really amazing, but what is there an interesting story to tie it in that will help media and the community champion you and your work too? So things to think about. Is there a key element in the work that's integral to the human experience? Is it a concept, record, or piece? Are there any specific accolades to look at? Is the artist aligned with a cause? How does their personal story or experiences inform or influence their sound and their work? And why is that important for the public? Why is that important for audiences, varied audiences as well? So I think that's really, really something. And going back to the digital aspect as well, with social media as a public space that it is now used almost all the time for everything that we do, artists also have the power to help create dialogue amongst communities to highlight things through their work and their music as well. So I think that the storytelling is very important.
Incredibly important, for sure. Yeah. And what we do is we just help amplify that.
Okay.
You know?
Very neat. Yeah, one of my favorite things is hearing the interviews that people do with musicians and hearing what inspired them in writing that song and the context of where they were. And you see like the changes between different albums. So that is always a really enjoyable aspect of understanding and appreciating artists on the listener side and on the fan side, I find. All right, so I have 2 more short questions, and then we're going to get it to an open forum. So if you have questions, keep popping them in the chat, and we're going to get to them shortly. Okay, so this might be for you, Mary. Once an artist is signed to a label, what does the internal team look like regarding these matters? So we kind of talked in the beginning about when people are just starting, they don't have a team, they start building it, and then they sign with the label. Does that change that configuration? Or what services does a label offer then? And kind of the key people the artist might come into contact with. If you can share some insight of that experience of after an artist signs.
Mm-hmm. So we our spectrum of services. We have a label manager that is responsible. Every artist that gets signed to our label has a label manager. So that label manager works with the streaming team, the promotion team, the publicist, the social media team,
Oh, wow.
the marketing department. And then we have managers right across the country that work with radio and with media. So when our artists go out on the road, we have people right across the country that help to set up the interviews or the contests, bring them around to meet people, that sort of thing. We have A&R expertise. We have inventive marketing, global reach, and a whole universe of opportunity, because being signed to Warner Music,
Mhm.
we have offices around the world. Obviously, if we sign somebody in Canada, we're going to try to shop them to our various offices globally. And sometimes you'll get a release in other countries, sometimes you don't. But at least that opportunity is there. And I have found probably in the last few years, it is amazing how open other markets are these days, which is really, really great to see. You're seeing it more and more, for sure.
That is amazing.
Mhm.
And does anyone want to add to that? Otherwise, the next question would be, we talked about the range of when artists start and who they're starting to build their team with. So oftentimes they start with a manager, their own manager, someone maybe a huge supporter of them in the past that just takes on that management role of helping them. In terms of when an artist does bring on a manager to help out, what kind of key marketing and promo and PR roles should that person be expected to play? What are what are some things that an artist might find helpful? Or Ola, Mary, if you have some suggestions on, these are some things that a manager could take on until they kind of get more support from an outside agency.
Well, managers definitely are involved in the day-to-day goings on, whatever the artist is doing. But also they're very strategic in helping with the plan and getting their music, whether it's to a label or just basically spreading the word on them. I mean, they're like their right-hand guy or gal, right? It's their job to invest in their artists and make sure they're getting the support that they need on a daily basis, but also full picture. And you're right, it's got to be somebody that loves what you're doing, is vested in your career. Nobody is going to be as invested as yourself. Like a manager should be a for sure a close second, somebody that's going to help guide your career. I think having a good manager is really, really important.
I have a question from Dawn. Does an artist's linguistic ability influence the amount of global reach that Warner would invest? If someone could speak the language in a particular matter, example Spanish for Spain, LATAM, etc., would there be more interest in promoting them in those markets?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Does an artist's linguistic ability influence the amount of global reach that Warner would invest? If someone could speak the language of a particular market, for example, Spanish for Spain, would you be more interested in promoting them in those markets?
I mean, it's a bonus, I mean, when we sign an artist, it's about the music, right? It's all about the music.
Okay.
So if they happen to speak a few different languages, oh my God, hallelujah. I mean, it's a huge bonus. It's not the only reason. It comes down to the music. We sign artists because of their craft. And it's great if they can speak a few languages. Absolutely. Especially on the Quebec side. If they speak English and French and they can record in both languages. But yes, you're right. Our connections in Spain or all over Europe, if they speak Spanish and can sing in Spanish, even better.
Okay, so for an artist that is just starting to assemble their team, can you give me the initial tips you'd have for them? What would they need? What would that person do? And what would be the priority? Like the top 3 priorities for an indie artist in building up their team?
Were you asking me or
anybody? Yeah, anybody.
Oh,
No,
okay,
I saw
sorry.
you assembling your team. Your team has grown quite a bit. Was there a priority type of role that you want to cover and key tasks you wanted them to focus on? And who else have you added to your team?
I wouldn't say it in the order how I assembled my team since I know better now, but I would put it this way. Instead of saying manager, I would say paperwork person. So someone handling paperwork in terms of just emails coming in, going out. They don't have to be the one sending the email exactly, but they should see it before it goes out. So you should either type your reply and have your manager like go through it and then they send it, or they go through it and then let you know it's good to go, or and it's an edit somewhere. Just make sure there's a second pair of eyes, just not you calling the shots on like your communication back and forth. Because if what's leaving your email has typos, you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? But if there's someone making sure that's not happening, then at least you know that your efforts are going out the way you think they're going out. I also wanted to say like the right manager would probably scout you out when you're ready for a manager. While you're looking for a manager, you also have to look like someone who's ready for a manager, so you get those offers. I also wanted to share that the second person on my team, I picked them in a crowd while I was performing on stage, and they were standing next to a friend that brought them to the show, but they were so engaged in the performance. This was Blues Fest 2016. It wasn't my set. I was on a friend's performance set on stage, but I saw someone cheering me on so crazy that, long story short, today they're on my team, right? So you can identify someone who is ready to be just as hard working as you are on your brand. The only thing is you still have to be most hardworking. They have to come in just second. So I was just going to add those.
Perfect. Perfect. I have a few questions that came to me directly, so I'll get to them, but I want to do a quick thank you to Steve Gardner. He's putting some amazing tips in there. He's a music manager himself, so he experiences this and helps out Andrew Casera plus others. So his feedback has been really amazing, and he was one of our panelists in a past indie manager forum. So I'm just going to ask Lily's question. So we have 3 questions here, so just for managing time, I'll be quick with them. What are some problems independent managers face that label managers don't, and how can they work around this? Lily asked that. If anyone can answer that for us. Does that
I have had I've had a situation where I'm working on a project that has a deadline and then another project for the other weekend. But while we have our hands full, we get like a really good opportunity that come out of nowhere. So at that point, your managers may have to outsource or do a project or a case-by-case hire for that thing, for that opportunity not to be wasted. The key there is your manager, you want to hire a manager who has contacts, who is able to grow contacts or expand the contacts in the interest where you're trying to grow your market as well.
Okay, very good. Question from Laura McRae. What is the difference between a publicist and a publisher? So we talked about some definitions in the beginning when we kicked off. In our music business course, which a few individuals here, we started off with like 15 minutes of definitions, because if we're not on the same page on everything, we're not sure what roles they play. So can anyone explain the difference between a publicist and a publisher in the music context?
Maybe Mary can follow after me to expand on this one. Yeah, music publishing is the business of promoting music and the monetization around it, so royalties as well, and generating opportunities for the music that's being put out. And publicity, a publicist is someone that works to share the information around that content and the artist with the public and with media and audiences. If that makes sense. Am I on track, Mary?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. And I have, let's see, a question from Al James for Ola and Mary. When do you consider signing on new clients, and are you signing on new clients currently?
So I don't sign on the dotted line. We have an A&R department that they are the ones that make the decisions along with our president. You can go to our website and you can submit. And I mean, everybody that works for the company hopefully has, a great set of ears, and they're cognizant of what's happening in their respective markets. And, I might be able to get somebody in the front door, but I don't sign on the dotted line. That's not what I do.
Mhm.
We're always looking. Absolutely. I mean, we have an amazing A&R department that's continuously out looking for talent, always,
Mhm.
every day.
That's amazing. So talent, get yourself out there because people are looking.
That's
Ola,
right.
did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so it always depends on timing, always depends on timeline and what we can take on. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of agencies can work with a certain size of a roster, but always looking, and it's always great to connect with new artists and see what they're up to and what they're looking for. But
Perfect. So we're going to put all the pressure on Michael on asking the last question of the night, but then I'm going to give some time to each of the panelists if they want to give any lasting thoughts for people to think about. But let's sort out to Michael first on his question. For anyone on the panel, if there is time, how would you launch a new project in the current landscape of the industry? So the current landscape being the pandemic, being I guess, what would help now in doing that type of campaign? Any thoughts and feedback from anybody for a new project? It's hard because all of them are so different, right? How you go about it on a case by case.
I to start, I think it's a tough one. It's a great question. I think to be really creative with what you're doing, I know that's like a really broad statement, but to think outside the box and examine how you can utilize various platforms and spaces of all kinds. Now that the world is opening up again, that even if we can't get back to full-fledged tours or shows, there's other ways to perform and do things that are outside of doing a live stream, right? So I think right now it's about creativity and quite frankly, maybe being a bit fearless in a way and pursuing something different to see where it lands. Also looking to other things that might offer some inspiration, and going back to some earlier discussion too about consulting with people you trust and maybe having some brainstorming around that. So I think creativity is key, and yeah, being as fearless as you can to do something new.
Those are really good lessons to think about. Mary, Mo, did you want to add in some like larger picture things that people need to think about, have in the back of their mind when they're thinking about marketing themselves?
I would say, sorry, Mary. I would say, okay, I would say do not necessarily drop all that you already do or know, still employ all the methods you know, but make sure you're adding on 1, 2, or 3 of the most like the newly introduced methods. Like TikTok can break a song, right? You cannot drop an album in 2021, 22 if you haven't tested some of those songs on TikTok with intention, right? Like look at like Icon Island in Toronto, or look at Liberty PR in the US, or just look at one of them, put some budget behind, some money. I think they're when I consulted with them, it's like 4 weeks or 6 weeks, like 10 influencers. You could really get a song going on TikTok and like see what it looks like in public before it actually hits the waves. So I was just gonna say that don't lose old methods, but add on new methods.
To test. Okay, I like that. Mary, how about for you? What would be some last words?
I agree with all of those things, but I think you also have to take your time to focus on your music. Spend the time writing and playing and writing and playing and performing. I think all those things are incredibly important, and be your authentic self. I think those things, it comes back to that. There's so much marketing and everything else that goes along with it, but make sure you're spending the time on your craft, because that's where it all starts, right? I think that's something that you get kind of tied up trying to do everything else, and sometimes you just need to step back and know why you started it in the first place.
In
Because
our
it is about the music.
Yeah, in our business course, we talk about the why behind why we do things, right? And that really comes out through people's music, and people want to know that and connect to that. I have an announcement, Steve. You're getting a T-shirt. You have attended so many IMBs, and I believe you deserve a T-shirt. So you're going to email me your size. I'm going to mail it over to you, and that's what happens when you're a super engaged member and attend all these sessions and contribute to them. So just want to say thank you. So you get a prize today. This is all really informative. I have downloaded the chat. Feel free to pop in any last remaining resources that anyone finds helpful. I'll download that. And if you have any questions on any of those resources, I can email that out to you. You can always reach me at Jamie, Jamie, at ottawamike.com. I want to say a big thank you to Ola, to Mary, to Mo for giving us this amazing panel on stuff that is so important for artists. It's the flip side of the creativity, that this is how we get it out there, because you can be creative and a genius, but if we don't know about it, then we're not benefiting from it as a community, right? This should be uploaded throughout the summer, so stay tuned on that. If you have other questions for our panelists, feel free to send them over, and if we didn't get to it tonight, or if it comes into your head later tonight, we can maybe still capture that, because we have some awesome panelists here. Byron, another huge thank you to you. And is there any other thing I'm missing, Byron?
You mentioned it's the season finale.
Season finale? Oh yes, this is the season finale of IMB for the summer. But I popped in our survey into the jot form. We want to hear your feedback, hear what IMBs you've attended, what topics you want to see us cover. Are there any suggestions on panelists? You yourself could be a panelist, because I know a lot of experience and expertise sits on this panel here on this screen. So feel free to send us your suggestions. We will definitely take note of that and begin our planning. And we're so happy that we're partnering with Mazzuca starting in the fall, and they're going to be a major partner of ours. They help musicians increase their revenue through a more musician-friendly website. So if you're looking for some downtime right now in the summer, right now is the time to update your website. Update your EBK, which will help your website and your content of your story, touch on your story, and all the tips that you touched on today. But big thank you. Enjoy your evening. If you're looking for things to do and seeing what OMIC is up to, make sure you email us to sign up for our newsletter, because we send out some news every week or every 2 weeks, depending on how much is going on. And obviously you can follow us on our social media and let us know where we follow you, so we can stay up to date on all the things that everyone has going on, because there's a lot. Otherwise, stay tuned for the next IMB in September. But in the meantime, help us generate that content of what those IMBs will contain. Cool.
Thanks to you, Jamie.
Enjoy your summer, everyone.
Stay
Thanks,
safe.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.